Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. We are tenure-track faculty members in the sciences, working at a primarily undergraduate university in California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss. Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Claire.
And I'm Ruth. And today we're going to talk about mentors. But before we do that, Claire, how was your week?
My week was really good. I wanted to report, so I've been using GatherTown instead of Zoom or some other systems for lecture, and it's been going great.
Oh, awesome.
There's really been no issues. There's, a couple students have had trouble getting their sound to work, but, that happens in Zoom too, and it seems like it's all working, equal number of technical difficulties as in Zoom, and really not that many. And I'm just really into having a virtual place where we can go. I have like my little virtual office in our virtual room. And students come and they walk over. Then it's time for lecture and we all walk over to the lecture room together in the little virtual space. And I really am enjoying it. It just feels a little more real. Like we are actually getting together rather than a video chat that's just a video chat,
Dude, I'm excited about this for lots of reasons. I wonder, is it, even just a bit more engaging because it's a bit different? Like, you have to think a little more like, oh, I'm going into here instead. And
yeah. Like, even if everything is equal and you like this video chat service equally to this video chat service, it might be nice to just have a variety of video chat services.
Totally.
So I think that's cool.
I found out about attendance bots.
Oh, yes.
And there is like a free code students can get that will log them into Zoom at a certain time and whatnot. And I'm sure it will not work for GatherTown. So I was like, that is actually, excellent. I hadn't thought of that. That would be super cool.
No one's written a bot for GatherTown yet, I hope.
I know, it's amazing. It's amazing the kind of creativeness people use. Like, what could they do if they use that for something else? Do you know what I mean? Because apparently these attendance bots will even interact with people via chat, and it's a whole thing. So,
very impressive bots.
Yeah. What could you could cure COVID or something with that kind of ingenuity. So yeah, that's interesting. But okay, cool. I'm really. As usual, I'm going to need you to meet with me and really take me through the whole process. So maybe you can do a little thing for people.
Yeah, well, I made a little video to introduce my students to GatherTown. I'd be happy to share that with anyone who's interested in using GatherTown. So just email us if you're interested. Contact professorpodcast@gmail.com.
Yay. That's exciting.
How was your week, Ruth?
My week was okay. So I think I mentioned getting really schooled about my grant.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Reviews.
And so, yeah.
Normal reviews.
Right.
To everyone.
So that's the thing. I think that another opportunity came up for a smaller amount of funding or whatever. And I was like, maybe should I look at that? And so I reread the reviews and I was like, oh, these aren't that bad. So it's just weird. When you're just feeling so your feelings got hurt and you're like, oh my God. And then, they're still, in some ways, some things were really rightly harsh and some things I think were less rightly harsh. But anyway, there was a lot of useful information in there. So
totally. Oh, good. I'm glad they are more useful now that you've
right. So I think I didn't, because I was like, no. And I think you might have even told me, you want to go back and read them later on. And I was like, no, I won't. And I won't do
I do not want to read these again. Totally.
Never. And so I forgot that it might become helpful.
Oh, that's so good. That's great.
And then the other thing I have to report is that I guess my children are also using my desk for their Zoom school.
Okay.
And as part of celebrations, anyway, there's glitter everywhere. You cannot get rid of glitter. Once it's here, it's never leaving. And I think that happened when the kids were small. Eric did some craft project that went awry with them. Mm-hmm. But years later, there was still glitter. There was glitter in my textbooks. And so I have a feeling this is going to be another Glitter-mageddon or whatever, where it's never going away. So
that's funny. I remember seeing something that was There are 10 craft projects going on. One of the projects involves glitter. How many projects have glitter on them or something?
How many children will now have glitter in their ears?
Yeah.
And yes. Yeah. It's so magical. Glitter is wonderful, and yet it's yeah.
Permanently attached.
Yeah, it'll be here after any apocalypse, so still be glitter in my keyboard. So that will still be happening.
That's funny.
Yeah. So so tell me, mentors.
Yes. Well, first, let me tell you this quote I have, which is about mentors.
I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, perfect.
So it's Jen Sincero, who I love Jen Sincero. If you haven't read her books, highly recommend. Here's a quote from one of her books. Coaches and mentors are farther along than you are. They're sitting on top of the mountain, eating an orange, watching you stumble around down there. They can point out something in 28 seconds that might take you the next 3 years to figure out. So, just a reminder.
Oh, man. That really, pulls it all together. I love it.
They're just chilling, eating an orange. You're stumbling around. I love it. So, yes, mentors. So, we're kind of thinking about both mentors for us and us being mentors. And I'm kind of focusing in terms of me being a mentor on interacting one-on-one with students. I don't know if you're doing that too, Ruth.
It's so weird. Do you think because I feel like we're in kind of in the middle. Do you think you'll ever get to a point where you're only the font of wisdom for people? Like you're the only being a mentor and not, do you know what I mean? Or will we always, I hope we do because it's inspiring. Like we'll always have mentors.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that I wouldn't be remembering, inspiring people as I go about things.
I'm thinking of multi-layered mountains where someone else is sitting above that other person eating another orange and going, oh, look, you're about to. Yeah. Okay, good.
Totally. I think so too.
Good.
So what's working for you with mentors?
I think it's really working for me to even have the framing of mentors.
Okay.
Because I don't think I recognized that's what people were to me or, that I was that to other people. So I think even just the framework of being oh, I do really admire this person. And this is so I think I actually have quite a few.
Yes.
And I kind of have different aspects for each one. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily there's one person I'm just stalking and want to be exactly like them. It's sort of different aspects. Do you know what I mean? And, even you are definitely would be a mentor in terms of how you manage meetings and how you're this super effective committee person, you know what I mean? And then other people for different things
totally.
So yeah, it's kind of I have almost a collection of all of those things.
Totally.
And so yeah, and I think just even acknowledging, oh, that is something about that person that I would like to emulate or use that as an inspiration for how I would like to develop in that regard.
I love it. Yeah, I have virtually the same thing written down.
Oh, cool. Tell me. That's it.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. No, it's the same exact thing. I like to consider who's doing something in a way that I want to do it and take inspiration in that regard from lots of people. So yeah, I've got people who are mentors in teaching and then in their attitude and then in being a go-getter or being creative, all these different categories of people where I say, man, that person does that just the way I want to do it. Let me try to emulate them in that regard. Totally. And tons of them. I agree with you completely.
And I think that I always have done that, but I sort of didn't necessarily do that last step of connecting it back to, oh, this is something I might like to try. Do you know, just sort of having admiration, but not necessarily recognizing, oh, maybe that means I want to try and do X, Y, and Z. Or maybe if I want to think about how to write a good email, I should go back and look at an email that so-and-so wrote.
Sure.
And, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I think to some extent it happens subconsciously, but having it in your conscious mind, I think, is very helpful to do it more effectively.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then I think beforehand I would have thought when people talked about having a mentor, and I've had people ask me do you have a mentor? And I think I kind of thought that meant you had to have that one person, and that's kind of weird when I actually say that, because then who would that be? Just like a better, more effective Ruth. Like, you know what I mean? Because everyone has different interests and different
Everyone
things.
has different interests, exactly, and different things they're aspiring towards. And no one's going to be the exact thing that you're aiming to be, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I'm really into certain aspects of Dolly Parton, but it's not going to get me all the way to tenure. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's like...
Yeah, totally. And then the other thing I was thinking about was kind of from the research, or from the student perspective of me being a mentor to students. I was thinking how, I think of myself as a mentor to research students and then to some other students in terms of academic life and how to, go through academia successfully. And then also if they're applying for internships or jobs or grad school and that kind of thing. So I was thinking that, first of all, I love it when I get to that point with a student where they just swing by my office and say like, hey, I got an email from this grad school and here's what it says. And I was thinking about replying this, but I wanted to just check with you, that kind of thing. I love when we get to that point. And so I was thinking that I think being available and approachable as an instructor can help lead towards getting to that point and being a mentor, and hopefully they feel comfortable coming by and talking about whatever they're applying for, or whatever they're interested in, because we have that rapport from the instructor side of things. So like during lab and in office hours and stuff, I try to have some conversations and start trying to build that, hoping that would, in general, I like doing that, but I also think it could help build towards mentor kind of situation. And I don't expect to be the mentor for everybody. Like, that's not my goal. Some people are going to mesh better with other people, and it's all about who clicks best with that student, and then hopefully that person can be a mentor. But I do want to reach as many people as possible,
Totally. And I was thinking, I remember the first time a student said that I was their mentor, and I was so mortified. I don't know why, but I was just it's so red, and I was like, me? And I just was not cool.
So surprising.
That's
so nice,
just it was super sweet, but it was just why me? But it is really cool when you get that relationship and you can see someone kind of, we talked about it a little bit with the career guidance, but when you kind of have that person who just kind of blossoms and you can see them going along, it's so lovely.
It's so lovely.
For sure. And yeah, and I think you're right. I think I guess I was just sort of thinking, I'm having a weird, if a tree falls in a wood, could you be a mentor and not know it? Do you know what I mean? Because I was thinking about you can end up in this kind of, I don't know what's the word, sort of building a relationship over the few years where but I wonder, could you? I think I certainly have people who don't know they're a mentor to me. Do you know what I mean? So
I was thinking about that too, where it's there's a very clear mentor relationship when the student is in my office and we're chatting about this thing directly. But then there's also the side of our job where, of course, we're continually talking to a whole class of students. And I try to do that in a way that's in a kind of role model scenario for whatever I think would be helpful to portray for them. So, it has happened that a student has said, you seem like you do this really well, and that's inspiring me to do that well too, and I hadn't even known, So I can see that, because I have all these people that I have in mind that I'm aspiring to do things the way they do, and I haven't mentioned it to most of them, so I can see that it could be a less obvious mentorship as well.
Yeah, totally. Because it feels the example you're using is so, when you have a research student, because it really feels like that's the time when you're teaching about doing research, but then it also will lead into REUs and grad school and stuff. But
totally.
Yeah.
And just how do you send emails effectively, and how do you interact with the collaborators effectively, and all these things that are skills that they use, whatever they go off and do is all stuff we're practicing.
Right. And I'm kind of thinking about so many things you talk about, even when you're talking about the way you email students is how, you're trying to be a role model and sort of set that tone. And I did a really interesting interview with someone who's doing a PhD about sort of, what is it like, kind of like, what's your guiding sort of principle?
Okay.
And I was sort of like, I don't know if I have one, and like, but I think, but I think that's something I do, and I don't know if I did it really on purpose. And we've talked about this, is sort of talking about life outside of school quite a bit, and trying to, I guess, ultimately model that that's normal, and that, you know, if you have a family or you have other interests, like, it's important, and you don't have to like sacrifice everything on the altar of academia. You know, like, you can. So yeah,
that's great. I mean, that sounds like a very meaningful thing to be your guiding light.
Right.
I love it.
And it plays to my chatting strengths, so that's how it works out. I'm like, let's call that a deliberate thing and say that that's what's happening. But yeah,
I'm sure that it is.
Yeah.
So what are you working on?
So I think I'm working a little bit on, man, I don't even know how to say all this without sounding really dramatic, but like, there is this really strange aspect of our job that's like slightly, okay, celebrity is a strong word, but do you know what
okay.
like?
Yeah, we're in the spotlight the whole time when we're teaching. Even if they're doing group work, we're the ones who say, okay, guys, here's the answer. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Kind of. And like, you know, I don't know, like, I've definitely talked to other professors. Like, it isn't even about us. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of what you're portraying. And I guess sometimes I'm wondering about the balance between being authentic or inspiring. Okay. And I think, so like, one thing with me that is an issue is my confidence is not always great, you know. And I remember early in my teaching, someone wrote a teaching evaluation like, you know, she's great and everything. I just wish she was more confident so I could like look up to her more. And I was like, geez, like, whoa, like, this is intense. And then I was like, oh, I'm letting down womankind everywhere by not being this like super tough physics lady. And, you know, so
all the women on your shoulders.
Right. But like, you know what I mean? And then I was like, kind of went into a bit of a tailspin trying to even think about that. Because I was like, is it better to demonstrate vulnerability and like,
I see,
or is it better, or to admit, and I think it is important to share our struggles, like, oh, I had a hard time feeling like I belonged in physics, but then to this girl that was like not what she wanted.
How interesting, because it really is valuable to you to show that you don't know everything and that you have vulnerabilities and all that, and that makes tons of sense, because it is, to feel like you have to reach knowing everything confidently before you can be a professor would scare you from doing lots of careers. So I understand.
But she kind of wanted like a, you know, like, and I mean, I think I've changed anyway since then, because it was earlier on and maybe I was a little less confident, but it just really made me think about like, wow, like, what is your responsibility in all of this? Like, is just being yourself sufficient, or do you have to like, you know, actually have a grander plan? And so I
think you will portray a grander plan by being yourself, you know?
Right.
It might be subconscious at first, but it happens. Like, you want to be vulnerable with the students, and that has broader meaning for you as well. And like you say, you've probably portrayed more confidence as you've gotten more confident teaching more, but even if you don't, that's okay. This one student wanted more confidence, but you can't please everybody. And if your teaching philosophy involves opening up to the students, then that's your teaching philosophy, and I'm sure it reaches lots of people.
And there's a lot of confident role models in physics. Like, someone can find another. There's other options. Like, I'm not. Yeah, but it was just definitely weird to think about. Like,
that is really interesting.
Yeah. So what about you? What are you working on?
Let's see. So I guess I'm always in the market for more mentors for myself. Like, I wonder what other areas I haven't thought of to look for. So just, I mean, that's a very open-ended question, because I don't have any examples of what things I haven't thought of yet. But I'm interested in.
We could take emails from people about that too.
Yeah.
Like,
what should I be working on? Who would be a good mentor for me? Yeah, great. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is how to invite a broader range of people to be mentees. So I think So like I said, it usually happens naturally. Students are in my office asking questions about class that they're taking. And then that leads to what are they doing this summer? And then that leads to me offering to read their personal statement for their internship or whatever. And then, we're getting to smaller and smaller numbers of people here. But eventually some of those people end up being the ones who swing by my office, and we have a very relaxed relationship where they're asking me questions and we're having lots of back and forth. And I really feel like I'm helping them do whatever it is that they're working on doing. So I wonder how to make it be broader rather than just kind of happenstance. And so I was wondering whether I should, like, one thing that occurred to me is as I wrote out that list of kind of the progression of a natural thing that leads towards this relationship I want, one thing that often happens is I do offer to read their materials or help them draft emails to potential advisors or whatever. And so I thought maybe I should extend that offer more broadly to my whole class. And again, only a subset of students would want to respond to that, but at least it would be broader than the ones who happen to be in my office when the subject comes up, So that was an idea.
That's interesting. I did a thing a few years ago where we basically had grad school club, which was that. And we had meetings once a week to kind of stagger the process. Do you know what I mean? Cool. And so I wonder if that's something you might want to do. It's so weird though, because the whole dance is so strange. Like you kind of put out like, here's some stuff and people take you up on that. And then, it's just so, I don't know. But I wonder if you... Because I mean, I was thinking about like you're already being very equitable. Like I think I narrow down too quickly. Like say if I get an opportunity and I email it to one student, but you're emailing it to the whole class, and so you're already kind of doing that. But I wonder, could it be if you wanted to? But then workload is always a thing. But like you could,
Sure. How did that grad school club work? Would you tell us a little more about that?
Oh, yeah. So we had, I think what was happening was I was having a lot of these conversations with different people. Mm-hmm. And so and then I noticed that a lot of people were kind of coming to the process too late.
Oh, yeah.
And so we started, and I don't really know if it was super effective. But anyway, it was, and we picked a time and we would meet. And so like the first week, we met and I would be like, everyone come back next week with like 7 schools and make a Google spreadsheet, and you list the schools. In the next column have the due dates. And then we kind of started building these spreadsheets of information. Like, okay, in each of those schools, find a couple of professors you might be interested in working for. Like answering questions like, do they take the GRE? All those kind of things, and building up those spreadsheets. And then another week we did like, hey, here's how you write a CV, and this, because a lot of kids haven't done that.
Sure.
And some schools seem to ask for it now.
Interesting.
And even if they don't, if you want to send like a sort of phishing email to a professor and say like, would you be accepting students, then you could have your CV ready. So we would make a CV and having a lot of conversations about like, how do you make that list of grad schools?
Yeah.
And the thing that always seems to blow their minds is like, you really shouldn't pick places that you don't want to live. And you don't necessarily just have to pick the 6 top schools in the country. Like there's a lot of different choices that go into that because it's a long period of time.
That kind of comes back to you don't have to sacrifice everything else on the altar of academia that you mentioned earlier. Like, you are going to be living there for a long time. Yeah.
Right. And like living somewhere scorching hot for the whole year may not be
if that's the thing that's going to set you up. Get old. Yeah.
Right. And like, or if you're really connected to your family, then, moving to Europe isn't necessarily, or, just being aware that,
Totally. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Well, that sounds cool. So I was thinking of how to get a broader offer out there. And this club thing that you did that makes a lot of sense as a way to do it.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I was thinking maybe for you that might be different is that your department's quite a bit bigger. So it could always be a thing you could partner up with someone about.
Totally. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or just put it out to your class or something.
Yeah, lots of options for how to do it. I'm really glad to have just realized that I could be more intentional about offering,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're already doing a lot of work.
Oh, thanks. Yes,
with like generating these mentor relationships.
totally. Yeah, you're right. And when you have them, they of course take time. So it is worth making sure that you're able to give them the time they need and don't get signed up for too many of them.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your reflection that like sometimes it just, because I one time like was like spent so much time with someone and then they kind of drifted off and became someone else's mentee, and I was like, oh wait, but like it's really not personal, and it is like
it's not
that person just had stuff that they so I'm kind of glad even just to have that reflection. I mean thinking back to when I was an undergrad, my mentor was fantastic, and I don't know why everyone didn't want her to be their mentor, but it's just what's a good match. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Cool. Okay, well, I had much more to think about with this.
Totally.
Than I realized. Yeah. Okay.
Glad to have thought about it a little more.
Cool. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.